Hi everybody, this is Jennifer Fox and this is a Fox Talk. I am repping this gear today in honor of the U.S. men's national teams competing in the World Cup right now, and they played an awesome first game and we get to watch them again this coming Friday, so go USA. So this talk today is about preparing a rental property for the sales market. So selling a rental is very different than selling a primary home because you have to consider leases, you have to consider tenants, you have to consider the condition of the property. There's just a lot that goes into planning for that sale. So let's start with the fact that if you have a tenant in a property and in a lease, you need to honor the lease. So the timing of the lease, when the lease ends, all of that matters. So if your lease ends July 31st and you can't get your property on the market till maybe middle of August, end of August, you've sort of missed the sales market, right? Now, it doesn't mean you can't sell. It doesn't mean that your agent or whoever you're working with can't, come up with some plans that have that still be very successful for you, but it's still something to consider that the best time to be on the market is going to be in the spring or early summer. So timing of the lease matters. Second is that yes, absolutely, you can sell the property while the tenant is in the property. You could, give the tenant notice. It could be 60 days before the tenant is vacating, and you could put it on the market. But in our experience, in this particular sales market, it is really important that your property shows its best possible condition. And that's not just about, paint and flooring. It's also about the way the property's staged and the furniture. And the truth is the tenant gets to live in the property the way they want to live in the property. They might have a darling house and they might put a huge oversized sectional in the living room because that's super comfortable for them and they love it and it looks great to them. But from a buyer's perspective, it makes that living room look really small. And so it changes their experience when they walk in and changes maybe the experience of a buyer. And so even if your tenant is fabulous, pays their rent on time, really cooperative, it may not be the best time to sell the property because it doesn't show in its best condition. The other thing is that every time that you're showing a property, every time someone goes in and they're interested in seeing your property, they either have to set an appointment or there's limits to the appointment if there's a tenant in place. But if the property is vacant and staged and ready for a showing, then it can be seen anytime. It's called go and show. So if someone wants to see it, they can immediately get online with their agent and set up a showing. It's much easier to get access to the property, to show the property. Another thing is that oftentimes if a tenant is in place and there's a closing that's happening, if the closing is happening while the tenant's still there, then there's additional agreements that have to go into place with the post-occupancy agreement and possibly the buyer needing to be a landlord for a short time. So again, it changes the experience of the buyer. So thinking about how you're going to time the property and another thing that I've brought up in other talks, but I think is really important, is when the tenant's lease is ending and when you are going to sell the property, you are required to give 91-day notice. So, for example, if their lease ends April 30th, of 2027, you need to give them notice that you're going to sell no later than the end of January. So they need to have February, March, and April to prepare to leave. So they know that their lease is not being renewed, they know that you're going to sell, but you need to give them 91-day notice. Once they vacate and you take possession of the property, you are required to put a valiant effort into selling it. So they require you to sell it for 90 days on the market. So those 90 days are, you might need it, right? You might need 30 days to get the property ready, 15 days, you get it on the market, and another 60 days on the market, and that's all fine. But if you were to get on the market in that first month and discover that the market was not responding great to your property, or you weren't happy with the price or the requirement to drop to generate more interest, you are in a position where you need to stay on the market for at least 90 days, or you need to stay off the rental market for 90 days is a better way to say that. So again, timing, planning, a lot goes into the thought behind selling your property. The other thing that comes up is, what are you going to do with that money? So how long has that been a rental property? If you haven't lived and occupied that property in the last 3 years, you're going to have a tax liability that you need to consider. So I've had some clients who are like, I'm okay paying those taxes. I don't want to put this money back in another investment property. I'm going to pull the money out. I've got other plans for it, and that is what I'm going to do. Other people have a plan to do what's called a 1031 exchange, where they take those funds and they identify another property and they're going to put those funds into another investment opportunity. So again, the timing of that matters as well. You have 45 days to identify that property, and so there's some timing issues around a 1031 exchange. So I think it's just really important to share that if you are selling your investment property, it is important to be thinking about all of these things, from the timing to the experience of having a tenant in place to the preparation of the property. I haven't even talked about that yet, right? I mean, if your property's been a rental property 5-10 years, you most likely are going to need a fresh coat of paint. You might need a little bit of landscaping work. You might need some flooring changed out if you've had carpet in the property for 10 years, for example. There are costs associated with transitioning your property to the sales market, whether you have tenants in it or you don't. But I think that if you're thinking about, okay, I want to sell my property, then the first thing we want to think about is, let's plan the lease end so that it's at the right time of year to really optimize your sale. Let's think about the timing on notifying your tenants. So if you're not sure what you're going to want to do in November or December, let's make sure your lease ends by maybe April 30th of 2027, so that the timing of giving the 91-day notice is in January, when you really feel like you have a good idea of the market and whether you're going to want to sell. Thirdly, it is really important to understand the condition of your property and what might need to be done at that property, so you're planning financially, for both financially and time, so maybe getting some estimates. And fourth, understanding the timing of how long you're going to be on the market. And then also, what are you going to do when you sell that property? Are you going to be transferring those funds into the next rental property? Are you going to be buying your, dream mountain rental, or maybe mountain home or condo, and you can turn it into a rental for a few years per the 1031 exchange rules, and then have that in the future? Or are you going to transfer it into a new opportunity completely in our market down here in the area? So there's so many things to be thinking about. We are happy to have these conversations with you. If you are working with your agent and they are familiar with these things, great. But if you want to get information from us about the timing and the planning and thinking this through, we'd love to have that conversation with you. So again, never hesitate to reach out. You can reach out to me directly at jen@foxpropertymgmt.com, and we can set up a time to chat. All right. Thanks so much for your time, and hope you have a great day. Bye.